Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Carmen. I'm the political director at Emerge. I see some folks are coming into the room, so we're going to go ahead and give it a quick couple of minutes to let everyone get a chance to get settled, maybe grab some coffee where you are. My drink of choice is some tea. I don't know if y'all can hear me. My throat's a little bit raspy, so I'll do my best to try and be super loud and hopefully prevent you all from hearing that. I promise I'm not like a 40-year-old chain smoker. It's just me having some allergies and a cold. For those who are just hopping on, again, my name is Brianna Carmen. I'm the political director here at Emerge. We'll go ahead and get started in about a minute or two. I have some amazing panelists who are with me here today. We're so grateful for them. We're grateful for you all to, be able to talk about such an important message that is not just a women's issue, but rather a community issue. Whenever politicians talk about, abortion, healthcare, childcare, all of these things being women's issues, they really forget that these are the backbone issues of society that really are predictors or really vocal outcomes of whether or not a society supports women and families and is productive and is able to take care of the people, whether they're most vulnerable or maybe some of those who actually have the most access. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Brianna Carmen. I'm the political director here at Emerge. I want to thank you all for joining Emerge's kickoff call on abortion and reproductive rights. Last week, the decision that came down from the Supreme Court was one that we've been dreading for weeks and actually even decades, not knowing when this decision would come through. And unfortunately, it was last week when the Supreme Court decided to strike down Roe versus Wade. We want to create some space and acknowledge that this is a tough time for folks on this call in our nation's history, but that doesn't mean that we can't band together and advocate and fight back on this gross encroachment of our rights. We are going to be having a conversation today to look at the recent Supreme Court decision on Dobbs v. Jackson, women's health, examine it, how it affects our rights, our freedoms, and really cover what next steps women, individuals, and allies can take to protect abortion access across the country. Our goal today is for y'all to feel like you know how to personally get involved in this fight and have a clear plan to turn your passion into action, motivate those around you, and feel like your steps are making a difference in this community. So I'm here with some amazing panelists who will be introduced a little bit later on. So I'd love to say a quick hello to them. For now, we have Katie Paris, red wine in blue in red, very fitting. Hi, Katie. We have Jusia Tigner out of Planned Parenthood, Texas. Hi, Jusia. We have Sarah Pope with us out of the LGBTQ Victory Fund. Hello, Sarah. And last but not least, we have our amazing moderator, Melissa Watson-Ward from Emerge. I'm so excited to speak with you all today as we discuss ways to get involved and to also ensure that we safeguard and expand this essential right. So Melissa, kicking it over to you.
Thank you, Brianna. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions for any of our audience members, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box as we go along, and we will take some time towards the end of our conversation to answer those questions. Before we begin, though, I would like to take a moment to have each of you tell us more about yourselves, your organizations, and the incredible work that you do. So first, I want to hear from Brianna Carmen, who we just heard from, who is the political director at Emerge.
Hi, everyone. So at Emerge, as Melissa mentioned, I'm our political director. I get to work with amazing groups like the ones that you all see on the screen, thinking through partnerships and other ways that Emerge can be creative in recruiting and training women to run for office. At Emerge, we've trained over 5,000 women. That includes over 1,100 alums who currently, as of today, serve in elected office. We have 12 alums who are currently serving in statewide executive offices, over 40 mayors, over 60 serving in judgeships, and over 200 in state legislatures across the country. Emerge alums were essential in flipping legislative chambers into majority women bodies, including New Mexico and Oregon state houses and the Nevada legislature. Emerge is very proud to call powerful electeds as part of our alums, including Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, Congresswoman Lucy McBath, Abigail Spanberger and Melanie Stansbury, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, San Francisco Mayor London Breed, and many others. This year, Emerge has over 750 candidates on the ballot in primaries from school board to Senate. Emerge celebrates a 75% win rate so far this year alone in primaries in our spring elections. Nearly half of all Emerge candidates this year are women in the new American majority. Emerge already has over 400 candidates who will be on the November ballot, with more to come this primary season as it continues. And kicking it back over to you, Melissa, for our amazing other co-panelists.
Thank you, Brianna. Next, we'll hear from Katie Paris, who is the founder of Red Wine and Blue.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you to you and all of Emerge for bringing us together right now. I know since Friday, it's just been a blizzard of emotions, and the only way I know how to start and whenever things are kind of this bad is to gather together first and just be really honest about how we're feeling, support each other, and go from there with some really kick-ass action plans, which I know all of these organizations have. So thanks for including us. My name's Katie Paris. I am an Ohio mom who started Red, White, and Blue just a few years ago when I saw the opportunity and felt the responsibility to be a part of organizing suburban women in my home state of Ohio, and that has ballooned to a community of over 350,000 women in suburbs all across this country. So I saw that opportunity and also felt that responsibility as suburban women have increasingly become a part of the multiracial coalition that is necessary for protection of our democracy and to win on all of the issues that we hold so near and dear with all of you. I founded Red, Wine, and Blue because so many suburban women saw this threat to extremism, this threat of extremism in our backyards and raging all across the country. And we are certainly seeing the real impacts of that today with this total overturn of Roe v. Wade. At Red, Wine, and Blue, we don't believe that you need to be a political activist to do your part. You just need to be willing to use your voice and to tap into your personal network, and that there's so much power there. And we provide everything you need really to organize into your community, whether that's training, media support, content to help educate your friends on the issues you care about, and to do all of that to change America. And for us, we go about it one suburb at a time.
Thank you, Katie. Now we'll hear from Sarah Polk, who is Director of U.S. Programs at LGBTQ Victory Fund.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for including us in this conversation as well. I wish we were all coming together under better circumstances, but I am glad that we are able to have this conversation. As Katie was saying, I think it's really helpful for us to discuss ways in which folks can plug in and start to become involved, since we know the only way to move forward is if we all come together and find collective action. So I am with Victory Fund, as Melissa shared, and we are a PAC that focuses on supporting LGBTQ folks who are running for elected office. And so right now, the goal is to have 35,000 LGBTQ folks in elected office in order to reach full parity of representing the entire LGBTQ community. That makes up about 7% of folks in the US. We are at less than 1% of representation right now. So we do need to elect 35,000 more folks to get there, and definitely want to discuss some ways in which folks can get involved. Our sister organization, Victory Institute, is a nonprofit organization that provides training opportunities, internships, and fellowships for LGBTQ folks who want to learn those skills in order to advance into the process of running for office. So I'll be discussing and sharing some of those opportunities today.
Thank you, Sarah. And next we'll hear from Drusilla Tigner, who is the Deputy Director of Strategic Campaigns and Partnerships at Planned Parenthood, Texas.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today with everybody. This is such a crucial time to be talking about reproductive rights, abortion access, and how folks can get involved. So I'm so excited to be here. Planned Parenthood Texas Votes is, my name is Drusilla Tigner. I am My pronouns are she and her. I'm based in Houston. And Planned Parenthood Texas Votes is the advocacy and political arm of Planned Parenthood affiliates here in Texas. We have 3 affiliates in Texas providing healthcare every single day to people who need it. And Planned Parenthood Texas Votes allows for or fights for our ability and our right to continue and maintain that access, not just to abortion, but the full range of reproductive health care that we provide, or that our clinics provide here in Texas. And so, you know, a significant portion of our work is political, it's advocacy, it's organizing, it's leadership development, it's everything that we need in this moment in order to make sure that we can continue to fight for our rights for access. Now is not the time to give up, and Planned Parenthood Texas Votes is here to support you or anybody who wants to get involved, and especially folks in Texas who want to stay in the fight and get into the fight for the first time.
Thank you, Drusilla, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. I wish, again, as Katie said, it was under better circumstances, but here we are to have this important conversation. So our first question is actually for Drusilla. You know, you do a lot of the on-the-ground work every day with reproductive rights and guaranteeing this essential service for those that need it. What are you all seeing in light of this ruling, and how is this ruling going to affect access in the Lone Star State?
Yeah, I mean, it's devastating here, y'all. There's significant amount of confusion and stress on the ground right now, not just for people who need care, but for health centers, for abortion providers, for organizations who provide practical support and funding like abortion funds. Everyone is asking the same question: what can we do right now to support patients, and what is now illegal? You know, I don't even know how many days, a little over a week ago or less than a week ago, people in the state of Texas could access abortion. It was hard. We had the 6-week ban in place that was enacted in September, but there was the ability to access abortion, and there was a clear ability to be able to help people get care outside of the state if they needed to. And now all of that is in question. We have 2 laws that are currently being challenged, actually, in court. It's a pre-Roe abortion ban and also our trigger law. And there's a question under both of those: is what can we do and what can we not do? And the problem is, you know, if we take a risk, if anybody takes a risk, they're potentially subjecting themselves to a felony in the state of Texas right now for helping people provide care or helping people get care that just a week ago was a fundamental right protected by the Constitution. And so it is chaos. People are scared. People don't know where to turn. Folks don't know what to do. And there aren't any clear answers, because this is unprecedented. We are in unprecedented times, and so we are navigating it together, and it's difficult. I also want to be really clear that while, yes, the Supreme Court decision did cause this chaos, the real cause of the chaos is the laws that were enacted in the state of Texas by extremist politicians who are anti-abortion and who have enacted laws that ban abortion with no exceptions for rape or incest, that will subject people who provide abortions to first-degree felonies, potentially punishable by life in prison. Like, this is definitely about the court, but it is also about bad actors in our state who don't actually care about the people they serve and are attempting to win political points with people's lives. And so, yeah, I mean, it's chaos. We, like I said, 9 months ago, SB 8 went into effect. We had so many stories about people, devastating stories about people who were just outside of the legal limit, who needed to get care. Like, for example, one woman who had a child in intensive care, who already had a very sick child in the hospital, got unexpectedly pregnant, was past the legal limit, and had to make the decision whether or not she was going to leave the bedside of her child for days to go out of state to get care, or carry an unwanted pregnancy. And that is a story among many that we've been hearing, and those stories are going to come in more fast, quicker now that we have a full abortion ban in effect in Texas, because it is devastating. People are going to need care, and they're not going to be able to get it in their home state. And that's just, it's a tragedy.
Thank you, Drusilla. I know myself, being in a southern state, I've been looking at Texas to see what is to come from my state. And I'm very worried, but I'm not hopeless, because we know that there are activists, organizers, and legislators on the ground ready to fight this fight. So my question for Katie is, why is it more important than ever for people to mobilize around this issue?
I think that it is so easy for us all to, look, we all feel exhausted. We feel completely overwhelmed. But here's the thing. They know, the extremist politicians who had this planned out for years and decades in advance this is exactly what they've been trying to achieve. They know that they win when we feel exhausted, hopeless, and despondent. But here's the thing. We win when we take our anger and our sadness and our fears and we channel them. And that is only possible, I believe, to do in community. And that's why coming together is so important. But when we refuse to sit out or be silent, when we are willing to dig deep, tap into our own voices, and not only our own, but reach out to everybody else we know too, to make sure that they understand the stakes, because this is a confusing time. We do need to be reaching out and helping each other understand, okay, well, what's going on in my state? And we need to make sure they vote. And in every state, it is different, right? It's understanding, okay, is it the state legislature that is going to make the difference here? Is this going to come down to the governor's race? Is this the state Supreme Court? But that's also a huge opportunity. Oftentimes people feel like, well, what, my vote doesn't matter. Your vote really matters in these local elections. And I think that we can get past sort of the partisan politics of some of these issues. You all know that this goes way beyond Democrat, Republican, way beyond pro-choice, pro-life. It's like those labels don't even matter. When you ask suburban women all across this country, do you think that the decision to have an abortion should be between a woman and her doctor, or it should be left to politicians and the government? 86% say that it should be between a woman and her doctor. Okay, this is not actually a controversial issue, because people understand it's a complex issue. And so it has to be a personal one. So we need to understand that we are absolutely the majority here. This is an extremist minority that is represented by these 6 justices who voted this way. But here's the deal. Ultimately, the votes of those 6 justices can be overwhelmed by the votes of millions of Americans. And this means we've got to start to get really smart about these local elections. We need to provide women access. We've got to help these women in Texas and their immediate needs. And thank God for Drusilla and all of you fighting in these states. I know in Ohio, we're down to a 6-week ban as it is today. And we have got to support these women, but we have to change who's in power here. And we have an opportunity in just a few months to do that. And so I'm trying to look at this as a huge mobilization opportunity, for a huge education opportunity. A lot of people don't even know they have representatives. People know they've got members of Congress representing them, but they don't often even know there's a difference between that and state legislature, which is making all of these decisions with huge consequences for all of us now at the state level. So yeah, it's kind of more important than ever. And we can't give away our power by just doing what they want us to, which is just to, tap out. We got to tap in.
I agree, Katie. We need to all tap in. You mentioned us being in community, and now is the time for us all to be in community and mobilize in anticipation for November, because we know that Roe is just the first of many rights that Republicans plan on coming after, like marriage equality and trans rights. So, to Sarah, how can people start plugging in on these issues?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I kind of want to back up a little bit and frame where we already are in terms of trans rights and thinking about marriage equality and other issues that directly impact the LGBTQ community. Because prior to Roe being overturned, within state legislatures, like Katie was saying, so much is happening at the state level. There were already over 300 pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation within state legislatures this year alone. And many of these were focused on those that were most marginalized within the LGBTQ community. So a lot of anti-trans legislation, particularly focusing on children and with their bodily autonomy, looking at gender affirming care in states like Texas, pushing forth legislation that would label children accessing gender affirming care, even with their parents' permission, as child abuse. And so then that was going to be an issue that would, clog the social services, child protective services, really, impacting so many other issues, not just the LGBTQ community, but thinking about how children as a whole are impacted by this. And then with, the overturning of Roe, we can see that, folks within the LGBTQ community are already impacted by this. Queer women who can get pregnant. We have non-binary and trans folks who can get pregnant. LGBTQ folks who are those that may impregnate someone who then cannot access abortion services. So it's very intersectional and, something that is already impacting the community, but we definitely then have concerns around what are the ripple effects for queer folks who are looking to access IVF services. Is this something that will be limited? We've already seen, anti-LGBTQ legislation that's been targeting adoption rights and access to contraception, all issues that affect LGBTQ folks, but also the larger community. And so, as Katie was saying, we really can look at our state legislatures as a great place to start. With overturning federal legislation, we really see that the onus is on states to come up with legislation that will codify, abortion protection and ensure that folks have access to so many other rights. And so we've really seen that, with issues like marriage equality, it's very similar to abortion access. Most Americans support this. Over 2/3 of Americans support marriage equality. This is a 13% growth from 2015 when the Supreme Court decision occurred to make marriage equality law of the land. We've really seen that folks are supportive, and we need to ensure that, this is codified in every state in case there are more, federal rollbacks like we've been seeing. And so with this, we're really focusing on the state legislatures and saying you have a few options. You can support folks that are pro-choice candidates, that are pro-equality, that are really looking to protect the basic rights of folks so that we have these equal rights protections. And we have some folks who are proposing legislation in their state legislators right now to create sanctuary states for trans folks and their families. Again, doing similar legislation in terms of abortion access, saying this will be a safe space. You won't be prosecuted if you come from a state in which you don't have access to abortion. And so I would say a great place to start plugging in is to say, who are candidates that I support? How can I get involved in their campaigns? How can I donate to them? What can I do to support the folks that are already involved in the movement and already know how to be plugged in? They've already built these coalitions. How can I support them? I think a lot of times when we want to plug in, we want to be the leaders of these movements. We want to be the face. We want to really make the change. It's about decentering ourselves and supporting those that are already, doing the work that is supporting and moving forward the needle. But then in addition to that, it's about encouraging folks to run for office. Within the LGBTQ community, we see a much lower number of women who are running, but when LGBTQ women run, they tend to win at higher rates than LGBTQ men. So it's about encouraging those that to run for these positions, saying, state and local office is really important. At the school board level, that's where we see bathroom bills that affect transgender students. That's where we see, safety around playing sports and having all of these issues that have become very newsworthy impact very real children and very real adults. And so definitely starting at that local level, thinking about, am I the right person to run, or is there someone that I can support? That's where I always recommend folks start looking.
Thank you, Sarah. And that really takes us to my next question and to a comment that Lori had in the chat that says, do not forget about the importance of local office. Sarah, you mentioned different offices up and down the ballot having an impact on this. So, my question for Brianna, who focuses so much on getting specifically women to run for office, how can running for office help solve the issues that we're going to face with access to reproductive care and all the other rights that are under attack? And how can people plug in if they're interested in running?
Sure. So much like Sarah and Katie had mentioned, right, there are so many different offices that people are now going to start paying more attention to because they're realizing the power that that office position holds. And, here at Emerge, we know that running for office is going to be one of the most direct ways that you can protect and expand abortion access, other essential rights. We heard conversations and even saw in Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's opinion that next is Griswold, which is your protection to birth control. Next is Obergefell, which is the legalization of same-sex marriage. So they aren't being quiet in the future steps to come, and neither should we be in what action steps that we're going to be taking. As the Supreme Court and the federal government continue to fail to uphold our freedoms, we see that state offices and local offices are going to be ground zero in the fight for reproductive justice and other justices. Every single office will have a role to play. When we have more pro-choice women sitting in office, we'll feel that in our laws and our representation. An Emerge alum, Leslie Herod, out in Colorado, is in an abortion sanctuary state. Other Emerge alums are in states where they are going to be able to protect different accesses and different justice and representation. So that way we at the local and state level can fight back against these atrocities at the federal level. We saw that the same year the Nevada state legislature became majority woman in 2017. That was the same year that the state passed sweeping abortion rights reforms while other states sought to restrict it. And even, after we saw Roe fall within the last week or so, states with Democratic attorney generals, such as Michigan's Dana Nassel, refused to enforce the state's archaic 90-year-old anti-choice law, making it powerless. So we see that abortion rights are still protected in these states because pro-choice women are stepping forward and they're becoming the change that they weren't seeing from their elected offices. We know that, unfortunately, sometimes folks, especially women, tend to sit around waiting for someone to ask them. The rule is that women need to be asked 7 times, or we're waiting for the right candidate to step up. And now we're seeing this moment where this is the right moment and you are the right candidate because you are going to be protecting reproductive access and justice for so many people in your community.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you. And those are great examples of why it's important for us to have Democratic women specifically elected to office, because they do impact these issues that really impact families, which impact the community. Reminder for all of our audience members, if you have questions, please drop those in the Q&A. We'll be getting to those shortly. I do have a question for just anyone on the panel who would like to answer. People are frustrated right now. So in this ruling plus the other things that have come from the Supreme Court, the last week have just made people, I'm seeing, feel hopeless. And people are overwhelmed with the pandemic still going on and all the things that are going on in their life, and they don't feel like they can actually make a difference on issues like this, with everything else that's going on just in the world overall, and with the Supreme Court being such, it feels like something that you don't have an impact on. So how would you respond to people who say that I can't make a difference on issues like this?
I can jump in. For us in Texas, we've kind of been in that space for a long time. It feels like, as an abortion advocate in Texas, that no matter what I do, we're not going to win. And I have to tell you that we cannot have that attitude. As soon as we say that, I can't make a difference, or it doesn't matter, or my voice won't be heard, we've lost. And in places where, we have been fighting and we've been in the underdog for a long time, we know that, right? We know that it's going to take a long time to impact major change in our state. And it's going to take a long time to make major impact in this country. But if we give up, if we don't stand up right now, if we let our voice be silenced, we will not get anywhere. So it is so important. I know it feels like your voice is not enough, but our voices collectively together is enough and will be enough. And we have such a long tradition in this country of mobilization, of mass movements, making big differences in our communities, but it takes a long time. So be patient. I know you want change now. I know you want that that overturning of that decision right now, but it's not going to happen. And we can't let ourselves be fatigued or tired by the idea that this is going to take longer than we hoped it would, because we have to fight now more than ever. And so get involved. I know it's daunting. Believe me, I'm an abortion advocate in Texas. I know, but it is our responsibility to step in at this time, get involved in the movement, and have your voice be heard as a part of our collective course.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Similarly to what Drusilla was saying about coming together collectively, I try to frame it on what have we seen that has worked. And I think the labor movement has been really encouraging. When folks say, I can't make a difference, I say, look at Amazon. That's kind of behemoth of, an institution that folks really said nothing can be done. And seeing the impact that forming the Amazon labor union has been amazing. Seeing everyday folks coming together and building a movement and moving forth with change in areas that we really didn't think was possible. I know I was the first one to say, oh, we'll never see Amazon unionize. And then seeing the work that they've done in Staten Island has been really inspiring and has reminded me of all that we can do when we come together. And I think it's really helpful to engage with the folks who've been doing mutual aid work or looking at the folks who've been working with abortion funds locally. These are the folks that, have really been supporting these one-on-one cases and can share these stories of what has worked. We've seen, I was talking about state legislatures earlier. It's been really helpful for me to connect with those folks and think about, how can I start getting involved at that level? Because in areas where there have been Democratic majorities, like we were talking about Nevada, and how there was this codification of abortion law and abortion reform, when there is the opportunity, when there are enough Democrats in office, we do see that these changes happen. And so we need to continue getting folks into those spaces and, remaining positive, like you were saying, Drusilla, that without hope, it's really hard to keep going. And so we need to keep motivating each other, looking at those moments of inspiration, seeing those one-on-one stories that have been really, exciting, invigorating, and remind us why we keep doing this work and why we keep going.
And I'll just add, once again, another shout out to those local elections. I mean, we had a state Senate election in Ohio in 2020 that was decided by 100 votes. It is not unusual in every state to have city council and school board races, and sometimes even state legislative races. They come down to a handful of votes, sometimes one vote. So look, if you don't vote, you are giving that deciding vote to somebody else, period. So I think there's huge opportunity here. Let's keep in mind that some of these city councils, I know in my home state, they've been trying to pass total abortion bans at the local level. So it even matters when it comes to something like city council. At school board, we've been talking about trans rights, protecting, these trans kids who are under attack when it comes to just wanting to play on the soccer team. We also have, at stake in these school boards, being able to teach accurate history to our kids. So all of this is tied up. It's all a fight against extremism. And seriously, one single vote can make a difference. So imagine you grab 10 friends, rope them in on this too. You're swinging elections.
Brianna, did you have a?
Oh, I did. Yeah. And so, adding on to this idea of collective action and collective power, we know that there are over 526,000 offices that are elected positions in this country. And all it takes is one person in each of those communities, and you can make a difference in 526,000 different places up and down the ballot. And we know that every part of that ticket matters. Governors' mansions and state legislatures can affect abortion policy statewide. Our state legislatures can introduce bills to protect abortion access, where governors can veto anti-choice legislation and direct state departments to fund abortion access and initiatives. We see state offices that have power to have an outsized impact in protecting our rights, even though they're often under discussed. We have the lieutenant governor, who can serve as a tiebreaker vote and can lobby and advocate for pro-choice legislation. As a state's top legislation and enforcement official, attorneys generals can choose not to enforce state laws, providing a powerful check to anti-choice legislators. And at the local level, much as Katie was mentioning, county and municipal offices can act when state officials refuse to do so, protecting abortion access by declaring sanctuary cities. district and county attorneys have similar powers to attorneys generals, not allowing them to prosecute anyone who seeks an abortion in their district. And city councils themselves can restrict and expand zoning laws and fund abortion initiatives. So that way they can ensure abortion access is accessible to the communities that need it most. So it really is up and down the ticket where folks in power have the power to protect abortion access and to also create spaces that protect and serve the communities that they were elected to represent.
Thank you, Brianna. And I think you just really honed in on why it's so important for us all to be engaged in voting. But what would you tell someone who's like, look, I vote every election, you know, I want to get more involved, but I'm not an activist and I'm not ready to run for office. What else can they do to get started if they want to get involved in this movement?
That sounds like my people. I'll jump in. In Red, White, and Blue, we're all about those women who are just like, I don't know, politics. Let's be honest, so many people feel that way. We can understand people feeling disillusioned or kind of like bad vibes when it comes to politics, but we can change that by women coming together and recognizing that, like, hey, this is just women getting together, caring about our communities, wanting to represent our values, stand up for our kids. And that's why I think it's so important that all of us do this visibly and model something better, something different. Okay. So I'm going to drop can we drop links in the chat? Yeah. Can we do that? Okay. If I go to everybody. All right. So Red, White, and Blue just launched about a month ago with Mallory McMorrow, you know, the Michigan state senator who just like went viral just a month or two ago from the Senate floor, responding when one of her opponents referred to her as a groomer because she, you know, supports all kids having a great education pretty much. So we launched with her what we call our Great Troublemaker Turnout. And at Red, White, and Blue, that is our massive relational organizing program. Our goal is to recruit 20,000 women to make a commitment to do more than voting in 2022. And that means being willing to basically, we call it, be the voting fairy godmother for your friends and family. So you are going to write down the names. You are going to say who you're taking responsibility for. We have 4 target states. They are Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, but you can do this anywhere. Those are just where we're focused, and we'll be tracking our collective action together. But when you contact the people that you know and you talk to them about, hey, have you like thought about what this road decision means, you know, in our state and in the lives of women in our lives? If you talk to them about, do you know that like we can have a real impact on what this means in our state if we flip some of these state legislative seats? You take responsibility for your people. The impact of that, every study shows, is exponentially greater than strangers talking to strangers. So relational organizing is the simple idea that people talking to the people that they know, people who trust them, you've got love there, you've got trust, that's more effective than a stranger talking to a stranger. So I dropped a link in the chat. It's called the Great Troublemaker Turnout. And we are having training sessions a couple times a week where you can come and meet other women who feel like you do, want to figure out, I don't know what to do, but I want to do something, and learn from them about how they're doing this. And we can all do this together. And it's actually really fun. Once you get past that sort of initial discomfort of like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm going to have these conversations about politics. Get past that. This is not talking like you're a commentator on CNN or MSNBC. This is talking to the people you love about things you care about. So that's one thing. I know the rest of these ladies have tons of other amazing ideas too. You can do all of them.
Thank you, Katie. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
I'll jump in for abortion advocacy specifically. I really, really encourage you to get involved with your local abortion fund. Abortion funds do not get enough credit for the amazing work that they do. They are local direct aid organizations to people that need care. So everybody who's like, I want to drive somebody out of state to get an abortion, go find your local abortion fund. For anybody who's like, I want to give a gas card, I want to buy a plane ticket, go find your local abortion fund. In Texas, you can go to needabortion.org. Nationally, you can go to the National Network of Abortion Funds to find who your local fund is. But I cannot say enough about organizations that directly give aid to folks who need care. Second thing, I'm obviously going to plug Planned Parenthood, because Yes, Planned Parenthood is the big brand in abortion advocacy in this country, but there's a reason. We are everywhere. If you don't have a local abortion fund, you're probably going to have a local Planned Parenthood doing advocacy in your state. And local Planned Parenthoods are essential to being able to do provide care, but also to to support what I do, like to do the advocacy work that is absolutely needed. But I guarantee you right now, everybody is sitting there like, I want to start my own organization. I know tons of you are feeling that way right now. First, find to see if there's a local organization that is already doing the work that you're doing and support them, work with them, expand their capacity, because we need everybody and we have an infrastructure right now that is crumbling. Let's not thin out the infrastructure. Let's support the organizations that are doing the work that they're doing right now. I'm going to direct folks to bandsoff.org. It's a national coalition of folks who are working to get people involved. So bandsoff.org is a great place to go. And I'm going to plug 2 of my programs too. We're also going to be doing a relational organizing here in Texas. If you follow us on PP Texas Votes, kind of across the platform, if you're in Texas, we'd love to get you involved. And the second thing is, you can do it from anywhere. We're going to be launching later today an Abortion is Freedom campaign for 4th of July for you to figure out how to abortion up your 4th of July over the coming weekends. Everybody's going to be going to barbecues or fireworks shows, and we have ways for you to get involved and to make a difference in your community while also having a good time, because I know it's important for us to all unwind in these moments as well. So our Abortion and Freedom is Freedom campaign is going to be launching, like I said, this afternoon. I was hoping to have it ready for this panel, but it is not quite there. But it will be very soon, so follow us at PP Texas Votes.
Like many of us, my brain's a little scattered, so I have a few disjointed ideas on different ways to plug in and get started, but really want to second what Drusilla said about abortion funds. There's no need to replicate the work and, coming up with new organizations. They exist. I'm based in Washington, D.C. The D.C. Abortion Fund has been around for over 30 years, doing amazing work, supporting folks in the entire DMV, so D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. There are so many different ways that you can support their work. So wanted to really heavily second that. In addition, I mentioned earlier, and I know Brianna mentioned Leslie Herod supporting Colorado becoming a sanctuary state. But really pushing the folks, if you're in a solidly blue area, I saw someone in the chat say, what do we do if we're in a solidly blue area? Urge your state legislators to propose legislation around becoming sanctuary states when it comes to abortion access, trans rights, LGBTQ rights, thinking about how to make your community safer for all marginalized folks, really pushing those areas where we know we can get that legislation passed is really important. It sets an example for other areas too, where there is legislation being passed that is anti-woman, anti-any, fill in the blank marginalized group. It sets the example of, we're not going to, let this happen in our states. We are going to fight back. And I think that can continue to be encouraging in areas where folks feel discouraged, like we were saying, where they feel like they can't make a difference. This is an example of how that's not true. We can make a difference. Another way is, if you are, again, this is for folks in solidly blue areas, look to see where there might be ballot initiatives in other areas where you can do phone banking and support. I would double check the date, but I believe in Kansas on August 2nd, there is going to be a ballot measure proposed for anti-abortion legislation in Kansas, or some sort of ballot measure to vote against abortion access. So look into ways that you can volunteer and do phone banking, make calls. I know stranger to stranger, like Katie was saying, isn't as effective as the folks that you know, but there are ways that you can support these campaigns. And then, I would be remiss as a training organ, someone who runs trainings, if I didn't mention trainings. While folks may not see themselves as an activist or see themselves as the future candidate, I know taking a training is just really helpful. It really demystifies the process of running for office. I think for a lot of folks, when they hear running for office, it just sounds like something that's unimaginable. You don't even know where to start. It sounds really overwhelming. So you just kind of automatically take yourself out of the running, check out and say, this isn't for me. And I think when you attend a training, you start to see that there really is a really good there's a framework that you can follow, that when you're developing a campaign plan, a big part of running for office is science. It's really just figuring out the numbers, it's figuring out what you need to do, and that you have a strong plan, that you're fundraising enough. You can do a lot of this when you really sit down and plan. And so talking to the right folks, getting to know folks at Emerge, you can come and talk to us at Victory Institute if you're an LGBTQ person interested in running for office. We're here to help demystify those processes. And so even if you don't think you're the right person, there may be someone that you know that would be a really good fit, someone that you find really inspiring and exciting and think that they could really mobilize your community. Talk to that person and connect them with resources. There's some really easy ways to start connecting folks to the work that's being done. And again, not replicating everything. You can plug into existing systems.
And with that being said, on July 12th, I invite all of you to join us. Emerge is hosting a Step Forward, which is, a 1-hour introduction to, if I ever want to run for office, what are the things that I have to think about? You, or you might know someone in your immediate, friend network that has an inkling to run for office. They've maybe tossed around the idea, or they say, hey, later down the road, I'd love to do this. You are the right person. It is the right time. Come join us for an hour. You'll learn so much about things that you can consider, especially as we talk about reproductive rights and justice, about different positions that might be of interest to you that are up and down the ticket. So that way it's a 1-hour investment of your time, but it could lead to the start of an investment in your community as someone who later on runs for office. So we'll drop the chat in, if not now, then a little bit later. But yes, please come join us July 12th for that 1-hour Step Forward.
Thank you. Those are all really good suggestions of what people can do. I hope y'all take that to heart of, you don't have to do everything in this fight. Find out what you're good at, what you have capacity to do, and do that well. But do something, because we definitely need all hands on deck. A lot of you have talked about local races and state ledge races. And there's some questions in the chat around national focus on this, or a national plan around, specifically reproductive rights, but all the other rights also. And if policy, can we actually enact policy fast enough to have an impact on any of these rights that the Supreme Court's taking away? So can y'all talk a little bit about what's happening on the national level, and the importance of congressional races, because we do know that even if the state ledge passes a reproductive rights, that the Republicans have a plan that if they get elected to Congress, we can see a national abortion ban. So can you talk a little bit about the national level of this, and what's happening on the national landscape?
Sure. So I can kick it off. I will say, on the opposite end, it's interesting because Republicans are never quiet about what they're doing. They're loud. They've had a plan going back decades, talking about how they will be incrementally, if not quickly, taking back rights for people who look like us on the call, people of color, people who are LGBTQIA+, people who are from low-income communities, people who basically do not look like the white men that have traditionally held power in this country for over 200 years. And so with that in mind, there's an opportunity to not only be reactive but proactive, since we know that this is coming down the pipeline. Again, attacks on reproduction. I can't talk today, sorry. It's a little bit of NyQuil and a cold, but attacks on reproductive access, attacks on birth control, attacks on same-sex marriage, basically just attacks on everything that we would think that contributes to justice in a society that you and I want to live on. It provides a unique opportunity for us to start recruiting candidates who we know will protect those rights, not only in places like the Deep South, but in places all over the country, like Sarah was mentioning, protecting blue areas where they're blue, making sure that we have sanctuary cities and states, and then also looking to flip state senates and state legislatures, because we see that those will be of importance within the very near future in creating great laws that we want to support for reproductive access, or pushing back on terrible bills coming down the pike.
Federal is not really my space, but I can tell you what is happening at the federal level on policy. So there's two major things. There's the Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify Roe v. Wade. That was voted on in the House. It's passed the House. It was voted on in the Senate. It failed in the Senate. We know that right now, in order to pass anything in the Senate, you have to overcome the filibuster. Just this morning, Joe Biden said that he was interested in making an exception for the filibuster, overturning the filibuster for abortion access, which is a great advocacy step. We obviously need the actual senators to do that. We know that we don't have the votes, or we don't have the votes right now, but we could, right, have the votes based on this upcoming election cycle, pressure campaigns for senators who are not currently with us, but could be with us. So plug in with your local advocacy around the Women's Health Protection Act. And then there's also the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment prevents the federal government from providing financial support for people who need care. So that is, if you're on Medicaid and you rely on Medicaid for your health care, if you need an abortion, Medicaid won't pay for it. And so getting the Hyde Amendment punishes people who are most marginalized, it punishes people who are economically disadvantaged. And so removing the Hyde Amendment out of the budget is another big possibility at the national level. And it's been gaining a significant amount of traction over the last year. And I can imagine that over the next several months, it'll continue to gain traction. So there's real change that could happen at the national level. The problem is we don't have the votes right now. So that's why everybody needs to go out and vote this election cycle to make real change at the national level. But again, it's also significantly important that everybody gets involved locally.
I mean, second all that, I would just say that, the threat of Republicans are very excited about the idea of taking back the House of Representatives and winning seats in the Senate. The consequences of that are very dire. Mitch McConnell has said that they want to pass a federal abortion ban, which would mean that all these states where it is safe and that wouldn't matter anymore. So I think that right now we don't have the votes to do the very good and affirming things that need to happen, and we need to gain ground. It's also very important that we don't lose it, because it's hard to see, even imagine it, but things could be worse, and that is what extremist, anti-choice politicians want in order to, if they're in charge.
Yeah, similar to other folks on this call who have mentioned that federal, policy and elections are not their area of expertise. I'm also in that boat, but I find that in moments like this, I like to turn to the federal elected officials who I do admire and see what they're saying. So I've looked to Senator Elizabeth Warren, to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to see what they've been saying, and both have shared information around initiatives that we can push for. So talking about expanding abortion access on federal lands, looking to make the abortion pill more accessible. So they have some really good concrete steps that we can start looking to and seeing, how can we advocate for those and what organizations are currently advocating for those. I wish I had a little bit more of a direct line to push people to, but they are constantly retweeting, sharing resources. So I always recommend looking to the folks who are in elected office that you admire, who would be pushing forth legislation that you think would be helpful, helpful and beneficial.
Thank you. Thank you. There's another question in the chat and the Q&A about what organizations to follow. And I'm just going to put a plug in for all of your organizations here on the line. If y'all can drop links to your websites in the chat for the audience, that'd be great, because I think, if you really want to address this issue, you have to address it from multiple points of view, and that's direct care up to electoral politics. And we have, the organizations on the line who are well equipped to do that. So if y'all could drop in the chat links to your websites for people to get involved, that would be great. And then I have one final question for you. Is there any final advice you would like to give to everyone joining us today?
Who wants to go first? This is what we all do for a living, give women advice. So, I'll just give the overarching and maybe people can weigh in with some more specifics, but, too often we think I'm not qualified, not just to run for office, but to even have the conversations about public policy, about voting about who's on the ballot. We think, what if I get asked a question and I don't have the specific statistic to answer the question? A specific statistic has literally never changed a person's mind. What changes people's minds is conversations with people that they trust, and that's you. So you are qualified because of your lived experience and because of the relationships that you have with other human beings. So please don't underestimate that. Every single person who is tuning in right now has enormous, enormous power. Please, please, if you care about this issue, have those conversations, speak up, use your voice. The other side wants you to be silent, sit tight, stay polite, not have those conversations. Don't give them that power, take your own.
I love what you just shared, Katie. I would say even today for myself, that was an example where originally from Victory Fund, we were going to be represented by our CEO and president, the former mayor of Houston, Mayor Anise Parker, and her flight ended up conflicting with this panel. And they asked if I wouldn't mind joining in her place. And I said, oh my God, stepping in place of the CEO who has all this experience as a mayor, I don't know if I'm the right person. And then said, I have lived experience that applies. I run our programming that directly works with LGBTQ women, overseeing our trainings. We're all qualified in a certain way to speak on these issues. And like you said, the statistic isn't going to be what changes things. It's really going to be these conversations, and not just conversations, but also learning. So I really encourage folks to look at different opportunities for learning and for getting more information on how to be more involved in the electoral process. So I'm a big fan of trainings. At Victory, we have programming specific to women. It's called Women Out to Win. And it's an advanced training for issues specific to women. Women have greater barriers in terms of fundraising, overcoming considerations around their qualifications and how they're perceived, and then also face greater attacks and have to think about how do we speak to issues that folks say are immoral, like when we're talking about abortion. And so we talk about those issues frankly and talk about some ways to overcome those barriers. So really encourage you to get plugged into organizations that are doing the work, who can have these conversations with you and provide the advice. We're all people behind these programs. So, if you come to one of our programs, you'll be speaking with me or some of my other colleagues, and we're really happy to chat with you. We don't find any question too silly or too, we always say there's no stupid questions, but it really is true. I want to have these conversations and have a phone call with you. So really reaching out to folks who are doing the work is helpful.
Who here would have ever thought that Sarah was not the person they asked to speak on this call? Like literally no one on this call would not have thought that you were it. So get it, girl.
Yeah, great job, Sarah. The thing that I would say is everybody needs to start talking about abortion. I know that it's uncomfortable. Nobody was raised to talk about sex. Nobody was raised to talk about abortion. In Texas, we don't even talk about any of that in school, right? All of that is under the table, but we have to start talking about abortion because abortion in this country is stigmatized. 1 in 4 women who can get pregnant will get an abortion at some point in their lifetime or in this country. And that is a huge portion of people. Everybody loves somebody who's had an abortion. Start talking about it. Start talking about it with men, start talking about it with non-binary folks, start talking about it with other women, start talking about it in general. And when you do talk about it, say the word abortion. The other side says the word abortion 4 times more than we do. We're afraid of it and we shouldn't be. We have to take the word back and we need to focus on values. Everything that everybody has said is absolutely right. You are the best messenger to your community for this issue and for any issue. And when you talk about it, don't talk about statistics. It's important to know that the vast majority of people in this country believe abortion is legal, should be legal, but that doesn't really matter when you're talking about what I personally believe. You don't really care what everybody believes. You care what you believe. And when you as a person have a strongly held belief, talking to somebody else about that strongly held belief will help them along in their journey. So talk about values, talk about bodily autonomy, come from a place of empathy. I love to use this phrase, it's not simple. You can't know somebody else's situation. You don't walk in another person's shoes. And so you shouldn't be making decisions for them. And politicians certainly shouldn't be making decisions for them. And so just remember that you are a great messenger here to say the word abortion, to come from values. Don't be afraid to speak up. You're going to be surprised. I come from a conservative town in Texas. I have a lot of conservative family members. The amount of people that I've had a conversation about abortion with that have shocked me. shocked me how supportive they are, but quietly or not out loud is amazing. And it's given me a sense of community and hope in this world. And I encourage you to go out and get that same hope and talk to the people in your family and your friend group that you don't know where they stand, but they could surprise you.
And just to quickly jump in, I will say, right, this is a movement. There are highs and there are lows, and you're allowed to feel them and move forward from them and learn from them. A great film that I watched on Netflix this weekend is The Janes with Emerge board member Heather Booth, just talking about a time from before, if we could even have imagined this before last week, where abortion was very illegal, very hard to access, and contributed to a lot of women's deaths and just very traumatic outcomes. And so I plugged that movie to share a glimpse into what we might see into the future, and also just to mention that, we have lived through this before. So please don't get stuck in despondency. Engagement is a spectrum. You can do everything and more. What you've heard from the women on this screen share, whether that's, supporting your local abortion provider, maybe running for office, volunteering for folks who are running for office, or bringing together folks to do phone banking and door knocking. There is so much to do. So I hope, if anything, that you'll take from this call, that there is a call to action. It's the call that best fits you. And together there are folks who are making this world a little bit more just every day. This is just a hard moment in our nation's history that we're going to be living through, but coming out, fingers crossed, on the better end of it. So please join us July 12th. I will see you there.
Thank you all so much. This has been powerful and inspiring words and great calls to action. So again, I want to thank y'all for your time. Thank our audience for our time. And I'm going to turn it back over to Brianna for some closing words.
So yes, I hope to see everyone's bright and shining faces July 12th for our 1 hour step forward, an introduction to running for office. If you've even just had a thought of it, maybe you or a friend aspires to that dream of representing their community. It is something that should be and can be for everyone. You don't have to be born into the right family. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to look a certain way. You just have to care about the people who are in your community and want to do something for them. And running for office could greatly impact the people who you live with by bypassing access to abortion, by protecting people's families and what they look like, and just being able to make this world a little bit better. So a huge shout out to Katie, to Sarah, to Drusilla, to Melissa for being on this call, for sharing about the great work that all of your organizations engage each and every day in. Sending my best to you, sending some hope out to your organizations and to the people on this call. We are available. You saw the links in the chat. Please do not be shy. And we look forward to seeing you again, hopefully on a screen or in person sometime soon.